Hey, CJ, welcome to Shared Narratives.
Thanks for having me on, Lily. This will be fun.
Definitely. Excited to chat about Mostly Metrics, the Substack and media empire that you're building. But before we get there, I always start way back at the beginning. For those that don't know you, where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
I grew up about 30 to 40 minutes outside of Boston, depending on the traffic. And I grew up a massive Celtics Patriots fan. I was like engrossed in Boston sports. And I come from a big family. I'm actually the oldest of six. And I loved writing. I love playing sports. And I kind of liked math. So it's kind of funny that I fell into finance because it probably wasn't like the number one thing I was interested in, but came from a family that was pretty involved in the community. And I think I was like your typical, I don't know, early 2000s kid riding his bike around town, causing trouble with his friends, and watching Sports Center every morning.
So cool. I love that you said writing first and then finance second, because one thing I was thinking about, I saw that you did an undergrad, like business finance degree, and I think we're around the same age. Is one thing I think a lot about is how when we were graduating from college, if you were interested in business or finance or were ambitious, the company everyone wanted to work for was Goldman Sachs, right? Like that was the
Yeah.
pinnacle of making it. Is like, oh, could I tell my mom and dad that I worked for Goldman Sachs? What do you think is that version of that company today? And do you even think it's a finance firm?
It's so funny. I don't think it's a finance firm anymore, but like the Goldman analog is like so spot on. I remember trying to apply to them. I actually had an interview with them coming out of college, and I totally blew it. Like I did so bad in the interview.
Me
I'm having
too.
like a visceral reaction to how bad it went.
Same.
Um, but like I was taught, I don't know. It felt like I was going to be a failure if I didn't either go to a big four accounting firm or go into investment banking. And I had done finance because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I heard that you could make a lot of money, and it was kind of a way to spread your surface area for good things to happen. I remember I interviewed at a place, and I was like, should I do marketing or finance? And the marketing CMO told me, do finance because you can always do marketing with a finance degree, but you can't do finance with a marketing degree. I was like, oh, all right, deductive reasoning there. I'll do that. And so I ended up working for PwC out of school, which was cool. And I remember my dad was pumped because he's like, you can work there for 30 years and become a partner and get like a pension. They'll pay 85% of your salary for the rest of your life. And I'm like, yeah, but you also hate your life while you're there, and you have to travel every week, and you're not near your family. So I don't know if that profession exists today. I mean, like I didn't really even know that you could work for a tech firm and do finance there coming out of school. And that's like where I found my product market fit. And B, I definitely didn't know that you could just write stuff and create stuff online to help people be smarter and make more money. And that's what I'm doing now. I think today it's kind of creating a business of yourself. And I think the logo is more the person than the company.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely want to chat more about that. I think just to go back to sort of the question, because I'm curious if you agree, is that I think if you're young and hungry and ambitious today, you probably want to work for either a big tech company or kind of a branded tech company like an OpenAI if you can get a job to the extent that they're A, big enough and B, higher entry level people, right? Because that's the challenge is that people wanted to go to a place like Goldman or PwC or Bain or whatever because you could get trained and you could go through this kind of rigorous training program and then be qualified to get a job at an OpenAI or Facebook or whatever it is. But a lot of those training programs are going away. And a lot of people are probably saying to themselves, should I waste the time or is it to my, benefit to go do something like that? Sorry if you can hear the dishwasher in the background. But
All
I don't know.
good.
I just think about that a lot. Is like if I was graduating from college today, I definitely would not want to work for Goldman Sachs. No offense to them.
I think people, to your point, wanted to work for Goldman because they had like a LinkedIn crush on what it would look like if they put it on their profile. And then also, it's what does this move set me up to do next? Like you could do some pretty cool things coming out of there. I mean, I lasted at PwC for under 2 years before I moved on to something else. I think coming out of college today, now that I'm synthesizing the question more, it's probably to work at like a venture capital firm because that helps you spread your surface area really wide because you could go to one of those portfolio companies or you could start your own fund someday, something like that. So I think it's moved from like the banking angle of things to more the investing angle of things. And perhaps it was there all along. I just wasn't aware of it. But like the investment banker route was definitely a tried and true path coming out.
Yeah, and it was a numbers game too, right? Like the reason again that it was both appealing is to go to a big place like that is they just hired a lot of people, right? They hired thousands of, former undergrads. Whereas if you go to a VC firm,
Yeah.
maybe they hire one person, and to be the 1 in a million person who gets the job and not be connected or be kind of an outsider is really hard.
And it's like they're not putting that one job rec online. Like you have to know somebody to get it. You can't apply for it. I remember when I was coming out of BC, just at my school alone, there were like 30 people interviewing for one of like 6 spots. And the group that I was trying to get into had 2 spots. And I was so nervous. My buddy Brendan, before the interview, who ended up, I think, at Deloitte out of college, he was like, just remember, you only need 1 spot. You don't need both of them. And I think I went in like feeling a bit better about it. Like, yeah, I don't need both. I just need one to pick me. But that's also like something that I think has changed in my mind being in the workforce almost, I don't know, maybe 15 years, coming up on 15 years now. It's like the tyranny of being picked. You have to be
Mm.
picked for one of these jobs coming out. And I don't know.
That's such an important and salient point right now because I think, as we've talked about what you're doing, what I'm doing is like you just pick yourself, right? You bet on yourself and you just start putting out content, whether it's writing or whether it's slide templates or whether it's Excel models. It's just like start doing the job. And then you can show people, that you're qualified in that regard, which I just feel like was harder 10 to 15 years ago. So I want to talk about, and yeah, unless you have a reaction to that. But I do want to talk about mostly
No, like
metrics.
to your point, it's like you just got to be useful and you just got to start doing stuff. Like I put stuff out into the universe for over 2 years and I couldn't get my mother-in-law or dog to even read it. And then after a while, like I found my own, against, I guess I said product market fit earlier with jobs. This was like an audience market fit of trying to figure out what they were interested in, and also what I could consistently write about and do forever. So to your point, you got to choose yourself.
Definitely. Cool. So I have a lot of questions about that. Fast forward a bit, you had a bunch of finance jobs, and then you started writing, as I understand it, mostly metrics while you were still working. But what
Yeah.
was the risk reward calculus for you when you said, okay, I really do want to bet on myself full time and do this for real? Like, what did that look like? What did your coworkers say when you told them? What did your former boss say when you told them?
Ooh. Well, I think there's like people think it just happens overnight. You're like, you wake up one morning, you're like, oh, I quit this and I'm just going to do that. I think it was like a 4-year journey where I was always trying to convince myself that it was a viable path. And the first company where I started at, they were not cool with me writing online. They didn't get it, quote unquote, get it. I think a lot of companies get it now, and how people have relationships with the people inside your company and their personality, and less so your logo as a company. But yeah, that was like me betting on myself to go out and find a CFO job, which I found actually through the newsletter because there were
Hmm.
investors reading it and they asked me to interview somewhere. So it was nice how I connected the dots there. So like in one area it wasn't liked, and then I come over and helps me get the best opportunity in my life there. And so I still keep writing online while I'm becoming a CFO to catalyze what I'm learning, put it out into the world. And then at some point, the money from it became meaningful enough to say, hey, I can pay for my kids' daycare, I can pay for the groceries and stuff with it if I want to do it. What's going to be the path to do it and make sure I don't leave anybody in the lurch? And I was lucky enough to actually have an exit and sell the company I was working at, and be a CFO that exited. And that also gave me, I think, like the money's cool from exiting a company, but it was more the credibility of like, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. He's done it before. He's not just like I don't know, what's the saying? Like, if you can't do, you teach, something like that. Like, I didn't want to be like the
Like a
teacher
dilettante.
who, yeah, I didn't want to be that. I never wanted people to look like, oh, well, he couldn't cut it being a CFO. That's why he's like writing about it now. It's like, no, I actually did it and didn't screw it up. And so that was big to me. And then after that, like, it was like, go for it, man. This is the shot that you always wanted to have. Like, I was actually shocked it came about finally after thinking about it for so long.
So interesting. I think what's really cool about Mostly Metrics and you is that you write about pretty serious topics like finance and operations in such a fresh, approachable way. And you also use like fun graphics and you just make it feel really, approachable. And so I'm curious, you mentioned you liked writing, but did the writing come naturally to you on these topics, or did you learn by doing? You kind of had to build the muscle and the reps.
Writing itself has always come really easy to me, Lily, but writing about finance topics, I had to get the reps in. Like I had to get hundreds of reps in. I think I wrote the equivalent of like 2.5 Harry Potter books before people started to read it. So you have to put yourself out there. You have to publish crappy drafts that you at the time don't know are crappy, but they are. But that was a different muscle. Now I could like do it with my eyes closed. And it's like there's this story about Picasso and he's in like a coffee shop and a woman comes up to him. She's like, I love your artwork. Would you doodle on this sketch for me or something? And so real quick, he just draws something forward. He hands it back to her. And she's like, thank you so much. And he's like, well, you can't take that. That's $50,000. And she's like, what do you mean it's $50,000? You did that in 3 seconds. He's like, I did it in 3 seconds, but it took me 30 years to learn it. And so I'm not saying that writing is that easy to me now. It'll never be. It's always like a craft, but over time you do get better at something in terms of like the amount of time you put into it and how fast you can come up with something that like your readers will respect and will resonate with them. And that's all like my father-in-law loves to surf. He calls it time on the board. You got to have time on the board in order to like be able to get up.
Totally. I love that anecdote. How do you think about balancing creating a lot of content, like just pushing out new ideas and fresh writing and fresh perspectives, but then also marketing it? Because they really are two different roles and they almost
Oh
require
yeah.
like two different sort of skill sets and time and energy. And that's something personally I struggle with. So how do you think about like promoting what you're doing on top of actually building the thing?
Well, I don't think I've ever fully cracked the code here, but you have to find flywheels within your own stuff to make it instantly shareable. So what I discovered is there were 3 core audiences who are reading mostly metrics. One is the CFO, who will forward it to the people under them on their team to say, hey, you should check this out or start to implement this in your own work. Okay, so that's one share. The next share is the person under the CFO who wants to forward it to look smart, because people are inherently selfish and they want to show off that they know something. So they'll forward it to their boss and say, hey, I read this and I thought it was cool and it applies to this thing that we're looking at. And then the third audience are investors who quote unquote want to be helpful, adding value. And so they'll read it and it's like tangential to the game that they're playing in a way. It's just from the operator's perspective, and they'll forward it to their CFOs to say, we should implement this in the next board meeting. So everything I write, I look at it like, which of those 3 audiences is this for? And is it shareable for them? And then the second way that I've thought about marketing it is owning very specific patches of real estate on the internet. So when I first started out and Twitter was still somewhat useful, I would sit on the couch every night while we were watching TV, me and my wife, and I would look up these 20 saved terms and I would try to literally be the reply guy for anything that was there with like a useful comment and then a link to my own stuff. So like if you were looking for net dollar retention in 2022, in January of 2022, you were not going to not find me on Twitter. And so that helped me get to my first 10,000 subscribers. And then from there, I think the consistency plays into it. But they're 2 very different skill sets and 2 very different ways to manage your time. Because one, you can brute force to a certain degree. And then the other one you have to slow down, which is hard.
Do you see, I don't know if you have anyone working with you today, either full time or part time, but do you see yourself hiring a team either to complement the work you're doing on the writing side or help on the promotional side or anything in between?
I have a VA who's great, who helps me with my scheduling, especially scheduling people for the podcast, because they're usually very important people who have busier schedules than me, and it's hard to get on their calendars. And to make sure that I protect my calendar so I don't say yes because I don't want to be mean to somebody and like take a meeting when I should be writing. Then I have a sales guy who works full time on sales, who's incredible because I can't be taking every sales call. And it's also nice that I can be the cool person that talks to the brand marketing person from time to time, but like I don't have to negotiate it all. I can be like the good guy. And then I also have a producer overseas who helps put out the content. But but nobody like from a payroll perspective, which I think is very purposeful, because I want to see like how far one person can take a company, like a compound startup of sorts. And it is a balance of time, but like I enjoy creating the content. I don't want to give that up to somebody else. I feel like it would be like, I don't know. There's like that parable of like the guy who's like chopping wood because he enjoys it one day, and his neighbor looks over the fence and he's like, "Hey, uh, you should like turn this into a business." And then like fast forward 40 years later, he's like, he doesn't chop wood anymore. He's just like overlooking the people in the factory who are producing the wood. I don't want to ever be that person. Like I think it's cool to own a company, but I also think it's cool to spend your time doing something meaningful that you enjoy and you get satisfaction from. Like if someone else was writing it, I wouldn't get like that laugh inside I have when I put a funny GIF up or something. And to me, it's hard to put a price on that.
I feel the same way. One thing that's really cool that I've noticed is you have some like big blue chip sponsors of the newsletter. So I'm curious, do you secure and negotiate all those sponsors on your own? And do you ever see a world where you would want an agent to the extent you don't already have one? But you can obviously run those numbers yourself, right? Say, okay, if I'm going to give away 15 to 20% of my top line revenue to this other person, they have to prove they can make 15 to 20% more in order for me to just break even. So curious, A, how do you negotiate those sponsors today? And would you ever want to scale it with an agency or even like management team?
Yeah, the second part's definitely interesting, and it's kind of what I'm doing today with my sales partner on things where it's funny. They're like big enterprise deal cycles now. It's not like, because I don't do any one-off posts. The
Mm.
minimum to work with our brand is a 3-month commitment. And it's not because I just want to like take your money or anything and you write me a big check. It's because being a CFO, who is the primary audience that we're selling into, I understand the procurement cycle. And there's no CFO out there who's going to see a NetSuite ad once and be like, you know what, I'm going to spend $200,000 today on an ERP and change all my core data structuring. Like it just doesn't happen that way. And so I say to them, listen, I don't want to take your money for 2 posts or 1 post because you're not going to like the results and I'm not going to like the results. So we have to partner on something over time that shows that we're building affinity and trust with the readers and that I can speak to in an educated way of why we're partnering. And so I think a lot of the sponsors empathize with that because I'm saying I understand how you go out and acquire a customer and I want to set you up for success that way. And also like I don't want to be in a transactional business where it's just like take this money quick, run the ads and that's it. Like I enjoy learning how the tools work for my ICP, for my core users. Like I'm a nerd when it comes to that. I enjoy attending product demos and stuff. So it's more of like a partnership program to me than it is a sales job, because if I can grow and people can bet on me, I want to also bet on those brands too to grow over time. And in that sense, a rising tide lifts all ships.
One thing you're sort of alluding to is like creating brand awareness for these other companies. Like I think it's probably hard for a CFO to never have heard of NetSuite. And if they haven't, I wonder kind of what rock they're living under.
Yeah.
But if they're not using like a promo code or some sort of like direct clickable link that attributes the partnership back to you, how do you get that feedback and that flywheel going so then you can present the data to future sponsors and say, hey, we ran these ads, we got these results? How do you think about kind of like facilitating that feedback loop?
If it's a enterprise sales cycle, it'll eventually, most of the time, I hope at least, show up of how you heard about us because you're doing a lot of talking to the person over the phone and stuff. There will be times where they will like download the CFO's guide to AI and machine learning at netsuite.com/metrics. So you guys can do that too. I need it. But they're like, they have to understand that the attribution is never going to be all that clear, but you also have to be in the right place at the right time when someone is going to make that once every 5-year purchasing decision. You can't afford to sit on the sidelines. So it's like, how do I get in front of them at a point further down the funnel with my target audience in a way that's impactful and also authentic? And I think that's why a lot of brands want to work with me. There's a lot of content out there, but like not a lot of it is interesting, and then B, I don't know, it just doesn't. it feels transactional in a way, like the person
Mm.
putting it out there, like that's why I don't work with any gambling brands or anything like that. It's like you can't rebuy that trust back with people.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I listened to a couple of Barstool podcasts, which is probably one of the most surprising things about me. You wouldn't think I'd listen to Barstool, but I
Yeah.
think it's interesting from a diligence perspective. And they're just like constantly shilling DraftKings and Fanatics and all FanDuel. I don't even know what they're always called. And
Yeah, a
it
bunch of
feels
them
on
approached
brand.
me.
Yeah, it feels
It
on
feels
brand
on
for
brand for
them.
them, but
Yeah.
yeah. I also never want to be like in the Tom Brady situation where it's like you told people to buy crypto. It's like, no, I want to just like help people be better at their jobs, and I'm sure you can make money doing that rather than telling people what financial decision to make.
Yeah, I feel like it's pretty clean cut to sell NetSuite. Although I don't know about you, when I was working for a CFO of a tech company a few years back, NetSuite was like the bane of my existence. It's so clunky, it's so hard to use, the user experience is horrible. Like why hasn't anyone reinvented NetSuite in your mind, or is someone working on it that I don't know about?
There are a lot of companies creating new ERPs from the ground up. Campfire is one. Quanta is another for smaller companies. It's really hard to create a true source of record that's both flexible, accurate, and nimble. And so I get that there are frustrations around ERPs, but at the same time, you want the data to be right. So I think this will be the generation, though, where it's kind of been like the last frontier, I feel like, within finance of people to come up with net new companies.
Yeah, maybe I'm too removed, but I feel like one company that could probably do it and have both the scale now is like Ramp. They have like a lot of the data, they have probably a lot of the customers, but then
Yeah.
the switching costs of getting people off of NetSuite if they're already using it are pretty high.
So Workday actually is having a lot of
Hmm.
success creating an ERP right now, and they already had the headcount data. And so it makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because if 70% of costs at some companies walk on 2 feet, it's like, okay, well, this is kind of transferable to, the historical financial information. And then they also have a financial module to forecast and budget off of it too. So it all comes together. I don't know. Time is a flat circle or whatever they say in that sense.
Yeah. I don't want to bore people because I'm sure it's like a little wonky for the
I know.
non-finance people. I do want to ask you one more question about the agent thing. Is I don't know about you, but do you ever look at the lists on Substack of like the rising newsletters, like the most popular
Oh, yeah.
in a given category? It's so interesting to me. I honestly don't know how they determine it. I have an idea, but do you think that the big newsletter writers will have agents? Like, will they be treated like the talent if they're not already? I think that they will, but it's
I
such
think
a,
so.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially as like Google AdWords dries up and people are looking for authentic channels of distribution that have a better return, it's going to be through people. And just like I think how athletes are managed or certain professionals are managed using someone to negotiate on their behalf, it only makes sense.
yeah.
I look at
And
the chart on Substack all the time. It's just based purely on revenue.
that's what I thought. I thought it was based on almost like velocity of paid subscribers.
The rising one's based on number of net new subscribers you got that day. And
Okay.
then the overall is just based on how many dollars you make. I've asked them a
Okay.
bunch of times.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, in theory, readers are not looking at those lists. It's just the creators, right? It's like we maybe care for 1 second
It's so
what
funny because that's what they
position we're
told
in.
me. They're like, only like the readers look at, I mean, only the writers look at this. I'm like, yeah, I have it
Okay.
bookmarked. I look all the time,
Yeah.
which is kind of stupid on my part because like more than 80% of my revenue comes from advertising, not from
Hmm.
Substack subscriptions, but I still want to be in the top 10. I think I'm number 14 or 15 right now in business, and I still want to be like up there on the list, but it's definitely not my top revenue stream just because that's a B2C motion and consumers are notoriously fickle. They'll pop in and out, happens all the time. The credit cards will fail. That's like the bane of my existence with subscriptions. It's probably 2/3 of my churn. And then I don't know, like if you can sell to a company and you're an individual for your own LLC company, like that's the most powerful way to make money.
One thing I hear a lot about because I've made friends with some other Substack folks is sort of the power of the referrals program. Is that something that you find drives good traffic for you? And do you ever ask people, like, you might be too big for this by now, but like, do you ever ask people, hey, would you refer Mostly Metrics and I'll refer your Substack? Because it seems like that has worked as like a growth mechanism for some folks.
Oh, the recommendations engine is a game changer. That's why I
Mm.
will never leave Substack, because I still get, I don't know, at least 1,000 subscribers a month from that.
Oh, wow.
But I've built relationships with everybody that I recommend. It's not like I just messaged them one day. Like, some have like invested in companies that I was at, or I've had them on the podcast, or we've met before, like in real life. Like, some people are just like, hey, you recommend me, I recommend you, and that's fine too. But like, I try to be thoughtful about the stuff that I personally read. Like, I read everybody that I recommend.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to suggest it in a transactional way.
No,
It's
not at all. But like, there have been other forums that have tried to create something similar, and it's like, oh, is this just like you're signing up for, how do I put this? It's almost like multi sign up or something, which I guess in essence it is. But like, if you're more thoughtful about thinking about like, oh, I'm part of an ecosystem of writers, who else would be like, if I was in a neighborhood, who else would be on my street? That's kind of how I like to think about it.
like classic network effects, right? Like the more people that are there, the more valuable it is, and the more that people get out of the platform.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, Substack takes 10%. It's like, I definitely get more than 10% value from the recommendations each month. Like, that's an easy math equation to do.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I wanted to ask you about is, thanks to Substacks like Mostly Metrics and other businesses out there, there's so much free online information now that we didn't have when we were kind of growing up in the
Oh
corporate
yeah.
world. Like, I feel like I had to slog through making slides and spreadsheets from scratch and then get feedback and then go back and iterate. And now there's just like a plethora of free stuff, which I think net is a good thing. But how do you think it will impact the next generation of like corporate workers?
It's so weird. Like, this next generation of kids graduating from college, like Lilly, they may never have to learn a VLOOKUP. They may never have to like do like a super hard sum if statement and like not and be lost on where to put the parentheses and like rage quit the application. Like,
Yep.
you're just gonna essentially like vibe code your way to an answer and like skip that application layer and the formulas. Like, no one will ever have to do like alt HFSA or whatever it is to like center but not merge across columns. And that, like, to me is very odd. So the next generation of people coming out of college, this next generation of workers, they're going to have a different experience on the job, but they're also going to find information in different ways that I think we didn't have access to. Like, trying to figure out how to make my board deck look good. The only option I had was like, what other board decks did we have on the share drive? I didn't really have like templates for that. So net, it is good, but it's very crowded, I'd say, now, with stuff that was basically just I don't know, like a hook to get people to download stuff, but it may not be actually that great or used in the real world.
Yeah, I just think there's so much benefit to learning by doing, like actually making it and getting feedback and incorporating it and asking people for opinions, going to your VC firm and asking what they think. Like, you learn so much in that process that I worry a little bit we'll get lost in this like new era. But as you said, it'll probably make people more efficient, more effective, and they'll learn new skills that we don't even know
It's
or can
funny
think of
because
right now.
I'm like complaining about the thing that like actually was the catalyst to make me start writing online, in
Mm,
a way that like I couldn't find this stuff. I couldn't find like a great definition of like how to
yeah.
calculate net dollar retention rate. And if I did find it, it was like it wasn't clicking with me because it was like chewing glass the way that it was explained. Like, there wasn't an on ramp to a lot of these things. Now there are ramps everywhere. It's just like you may get lost along the way.
Yeah, for sure. What's in like your media and information consumption diet? What do you consume? What do you like consuming that either helps you do your job or just is kind of entertainment for you?
Yeah. So like, part of the creation process is like forcing myself to step away and to not just like try to brute force putting more hours in to try to create more content. And I found that like I'm probably actually only that great at writing for like 3 hours a day. It's not like a investment banking job where you can do 12 hours of like work at like a simmering 6. out of 10. Like I need to be on and like really create good stuff. So each morning I take my dog for a walk and we tune into either a podcast that I did. I hate to listen to my own voice, but I have to do it to figure out what the guest said to see if there's something compelling to write about, which there usually is. So I'm repurposing smart things that people on my show have said that are relevant to my audience, which is a hack and a network effect in and of itself. Or I'm tuning into, I like 20-minute VC a lot. I like Logan Bartlett's podcast. There are a lot of things I actually listen to from the investor side of things. And then I also listen to stuff that's a bit tangential, like the Bill Simmons podcast, listen to Joe Rogan every once in a while. I'll listen to stuff that is commentary on what's going on in the world. And then at night, I read like everything on the Substack app. Love that they have dark mode. Makes it so much more enjoyable. But yeah, I
Yeah.
read all the stuff that I recommend on Substack, and then you just kind of got to let your unconscious connect the dots between things.
Yeah, for sure. Super cool. What switching gears a bit, what do you think about the memeification of finance? Like from the liquidity to Wall Street bets to TikTok influencers calling everything a recession indicator. What do you think about that? Do you think it's all in good fun or does it ever bother you?
I think it's all in good fun. At least you got people talking about it, right? And finance for so long has been like the art of keeping up this artificial wall to say I'm smarter than you and I'm going to keep other people out in this scarcity mindset. If anything, like it's good because it gets people interested and makes them feel like they can engage in the conversation. Now, should you be taking investment advice from people on TikTok? Probably not. But I love like Kyla Scanlon has great material. I look at her stuff all the time, and it's like, oh, I understand this. You're putting it into terms that I would, discuss like with my brother or something like over a beer. Like it makes it more approachable. And I think that's what's been broken in the education part of finance for so long. It's been held at afar so other people can't get in. And I hope that I'm at least trying to help break down that barrier to make it more fun and more approachable.
Oh, definitely. I think your stuff is really approachable. And if I was still working in like a finance or biz ops job, I would be like eating it up every day. I do read it every day, but I would be like figuring
Thanks.
out how I could apply it back to my job. Yeah, I agree with you. It's on the whole a good thing. I think for a long time, finance was really treated as a back office function, kind of like a no department that would come out and just say like, no, we can't allocate funds or we can't do this or we can't do that. But I think in a world where finance is like a strategic partner, whether it's to CEO or to the board or to leadership, it sounds so obvious, right? But I think the nature of that is changing. The thing that scares me is I think if like you walked around or if you went on TikTok and you asked the people who are saying everything's a recession indicator, do you know what the actual definition of a recession indicator is? I bet you most of them wouldn't. And that kind of scares me a little bit.
Yeah. I generally try to write about evergreen topics. So it will never have like a massive spike on day one hits like a headline would about the news, but it'll still be useful to you in 2 years to learn something from like a thematic perspective. There are definitely a lot of people who pander to that, like everything's a recession, the world is ending tomorrow, and that's the type of stuff I actually try to stay away from. So like, yeah, that scares me a bit because I mean, the economy can definitely talk itself into a recession. Like we've seen it happen before. And if people always think negative about things, like we do like factually live in the best time ever from like at least a healthcare perspective. I mean, employment's historically low. I'm not an economist or anything, but like it's better than the medieval times when like people were running around and killing each other with swords. So like people do over emphasize the bad stuff that goes on, I think, out there. And it does get hits, it does get clicks, but it's a dopamine hit, if anything. And I think like what I'm reflecting on now is that like dopamine or adrenaline hit you would definitely not get from a finance related topic 10 years ago. But now people have found a way to tap into that like they have with other things online.
Yeah, I agree. And I appreciate your point about the commitment to evergreen topics. And that helps you, right? To the extent that, people come back for these things later on. What do you think about, and my gut says I think I'll know your answer, but like, what do you think about corporate gossip? because I think that's a really growing category that people are really interested in, almost in the way that they were interested in like celebrity gossip like 10 or 20 years ago. And when I say corporate gossip, I mean things like, did you see that recent story of the Kohl's CEO who got kicked out because he had kind of like a conflict of interest with his girlfriend? That was really
Okay.
salacious and interesting. But then I would also put in kind of like whispers of mergers and acquisitions into that category. Would you ever want to cover things like that? Or you're just like, nah, I'm not going to touch it? Because I think it's a
I think it
business. I think there's a
I think
category
it's too
there.
fleeting. There is
Yeah.
a category. I have thought about it. Like OnlyFans is potentially up for sale for $8 billion. Like hell, I'll bite. I'll check it out and see what's going on here. At the same time, though, it's like, is it all filler? But
Yeah.
I mean, I think like shows like Succession have helped hype up this type of
Mm.
stuff of like these juicy characters who are stabbing each other in the back, and there's a lot of money at stake. Like, why wouldn't you want to tune into that? So I'm definitely a consumer of it. I'm not sure I'm the best person to be the creator of it, but like I enjoy it because I like part of my whole ethos is I think business should be fun. And if
Mm.
there's a way to make it more fun through storytelling and through having these larger than life characters, I love it. I think it reminds me of like the sports I used to watch growing up, and there are certain people who are playing into this, and I'm definitely tuning in for it. Is it something that I think is gonna it'll give you a good bite at the water cooler, but is it gonna help you make more money next year? Probably not.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You're staying true to what you do and what you want to do. I sort of call that category broadly junk food, which is like sometimes you have to give people a little bit of junk food to either hook them in or get them
Hmm.
to pay. But your version of junk food can look different, right? Like yours can be like the memes and some of the like just good, funky writing that feels like really inspired.
I love that junk food, and you gotta junk it up every once in a while to keep people engaged. Like I'll say some off the wall stuff to keep people hooked, and maybe I'm just scratching my own itch because I think it's funny. But yeah, you can't be a cardboard box and hope to have a lot of people read.
No, especially as like a true content creator, unless you're writing textbooks, which I don't even know if textbooks still exist anymore, if anybody's
I don't
writing
even
these
know if those make
textbooks.
money. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that whole industry works, which is funny. The publishing industry seems to have gone by the wayside, but I don't know too much about that.
I I'm like an analyst at heart. I analyze everything, people, culture, industries, tech, finance, whatever. Publishing is the most ass backwards industry I have ever studied in my entire life. Like it would
Tell me more.
make you laugh. No, we would need a whole episode on this. But they just they don't do anything from sort of like a strategic business financial perspective. It's all like finger in the air. And it's a lot of like, we want you to read these things. So, like, this is what we're going to publish versus here's what the market wants. And here's what like trends and data are telling
Oh
us that
wow.
people are interested in. It's so crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, the publishers used to be like the tastemakers, I feel like, of a lot of
Exactly.
things.
Yes.
But
And
but like they'd force it down on you almost.
yeah, because a lot of them, I'll give you just like a little anecdote, and this is a generalization, is a lot of the people who work at publishing companies are paid nothing, like literally nothing. And so, in order to work there, you have to come from a privileged, elite, well to do background, and you're
Mm.
probably pseudo intellectual. And so, yeah, you want people to read like World War II fiction or period pieces, when actually a lot of people want like rom coms and goofy stuff, and there's just like
Yeah.
this massive disconnect between what they want and what the consumer wants. But anyways, I won't go too
That's
far.
so real. Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Devil Wears Prada or something, the way that I'm thinking about how the office is run.
Yes, exactly. Um, what does the future of Mostly Metrics look like? You have the primary newsletter. I know you started a second one recently, the private equity
Yeah.
one. You have a podcast going. Like, tell me, what does the whole Mostly Metrics ecosystem look like in the next few years? Or what do you want to do?
I, I think it evolves day by day. It's funny because I've grown up and learned in all these venture-backed companies where like I know off the bat, like my company is not venture backable, nor do I want it to be. And I'm writing about that type of stuff, but I have like a cash flowing bootstrap business. And so it's just kind of ironic, right? That I'm now doing something completely different than the types of companies that I learned and cut my teeth at and now write about. And what I've noticed is there's this, and it was Anthony Pompliano who spoke about it on another podcast, but he was saying basically like businesses, what they'll try to do is they'll try to create a product which has a lot of technical risk, and then it has the execution risk of trying to go out and find a customer. And so what I'm doing is kind of the reverse. I'm creating a list of customers and friends and people that like my stuff. And then if I want to create a product, I have less execution risk of selling it to them. So I'm still trying to figure out what that product that I want to sell into them is. And there have been a lot of great companies that started as media in the front and then some sort of either data company or investing company in the back. And the Churning Group in particular has done an excellent job in investing in them. There are companies like Meat Eater or Cars and Bids or Hodinkee for watches. And so there could be an angle there. You just have to think like, oh, what would a CFO want to buy, or what would an investor who's reading this want to buy?
And are you thinking like a physical product, or are you thinking like software technology, cloud-based? Because I think of like a Joe Rogan, and I don't know, this is like a random anecdote. He has like a kettlebell, like it just like sold
Yeah,
out. He has like a exercise
I
kettlebell
tried
that
to
was
buy one.
really.
Yeah, it was the big gorilla face one. I thought it was pretty cool. I didn't get it because it sold out. But no, I do not want to touch inventory. I wouldn't even know what to
Yeah.
do with putting it on the balance sheet. I'm from the software world of things, and I think like data. I hate when people say like data is the new oil or data is the new
Mm.
currency. But if you have the most valuable newsletters, if you think about it, are getting you to some sort of data insight that eventually ends up in a financial model that people can make decisions off of. And
Hmm.
if I can provide that with benchmarking or surveying, so working backwards, having a large enough audience to survey, I think that would be the North Star.
Survey data is so powerful. I can't tell you how many times I worked for one specific startup that won't be named, is how many times the CEO would say like, okay, can you just like go get a metric of like how many product managers we would need for like how many engineers, and just like all these random heuristics. We're not random, they're important
Yeah.
heuristics, but that data was not available online. And I always had to go to the VC firm, and they would have some data, but it was just from their portfolio companies, right?
Just their portfolio companies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like super skewed. And I think, yeah, if you build this audience and they're willing to engage with you on sharing that data, anonymized, obviously, and then you can package it up and sell it to folks, I think that's a major opportunity.
I've started to do a bunch of benchmarking. So I did the tech stack survey in Q1 of this year, and we got over 1,000 CFOs and finance leaders to tell us what tools they used every day. So it's like, oh, I'm a $10 million revenue company. What should I be using for my ERP? It's like, okay, we got the benchmarks. And then I've also got into the operational benchmarks, and I'm still trying to make it as useful to people as possible in terms of, like you said, like how many product managers should I have per engineer here? So those are like the if you know, then you know type benchmarks that like you need day to day. But it's like the only person I can get these from are the people who invested in me, who may or may not have made the right investments. And I'm just using their median data.
Yeah. Do you have to incentivize them, like literally to fill out a survey or give you that information? Or you've built enough kind of credibility and trust and they'll do it for you?
They'll do it because I'm getting data from everybody else and then giving it back. And so it is a give to get model in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's immediately useful to them. Like they want to know the answer, and I think that's
Yeah,
why people are willing to give it. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that I'm like genuinely interested in this and want to get to the right answer for you. So I don't know how do you quantify that, but I do believe it goes a long way.
totally. People want to make data driven decisions, or they say they want to make data driven decisions, right? And so, to the
Yeah.
extent that you can hand them the information to do that, they'll probably be more bought into what you're providing and offering them.
So I think that's the next evolution. Like I'll always make the main thing, which is writing kick-ass content for people that is helpful to them in their own roles, makes them look smart, and helps them make better decisions. But I do think that there's a step to take it further for everybody that reads, to help them with like, oh, wow, this is a real product I can use day to day within my job.
Totally. I get the asset light perspective, but a part of me says there could be an entirely like an entire business built around helping content creators, with which I include like Substack writers and Instagram influencers and media people, like create physical branded products, right? And like help
Ooh.
them figure out what the product should be, bring it to market, distribute it, whatnot, and take a piece of it, obviously. But I'm like, oh, somebody should start that business. And maybe you can't really scale it, because if it works, then you're kind of like dedicated to this one person and their brand and their company. But that just feels like an opportunity that I haven't seen anyone kind of work on yet.
I think you would have to do it for a product that is bought based on trust and the person's brand, and less so because it's a differentiated product. So like Prime with Logan Paul or Jake Paul and KSI, like it's literally just Gatorade in a different sugar water. There's nothing like proprietary about it. Or Mr. Beast chocolate bars, or like, I've never used Kylie's makeup stuff, but all of sisters. And like I doubt there's anything like super proprietary about that, but you buy it based on the brand. So like for a CFO, what would that be? Would it be like a credit card and you get points back, but they really like your brand and everybody needs a credit card? It would have to be something that everybody needs.
Yes. It's like that old test of like, what do people use and need every day? Like toothpaste. Like what is the thing that like you just can't live without every day? And I would have to think more about what the CFO's version of that is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was Peter Lynch who ran the Magellan Fund at Fidelity forever. Like he would really watch what his wife bought and her friends, like at Filene's and stuff, and be like, oh, that's a product that they buy all the time. I think it was like I don't know if they use the word anymore, like a pantyhose or like linens or whatever they call it with the sock thing. I think that's what he invested in, because he saw like, oh, they're buying them all the time. Like it's a consumer behavior.
Yeah, I think it was Peter Lynch who said, like, invest in what you know, like invest in what you can understand.
Yes, that was the line. You said it way better than me.
Yeah, my brother always said that line to me, is like, what are the businesses that like you can actually like go out and like kick the tires and kind of like feel up close, whereas if they're too abstracted away or too technical, maybe you're not the right person to understand those. Yeah. Super cool. What haven't I asked you that you wish I asked you, or what haven't we covered?
Ooh, I don't know. You asked me a lot of things. I think the hardest challenge in going all in on the media and content stuff has been the time management aspect of it, because like you, I've been like a hard charger who's tried to, like, if there's a 25th hour in the day, I'm going to find a way to fill it with something. And that's actually not great for the creative process when people are judging you on the quality of your work, not necessarily the quantity. And then there is that give and take with like, well, I could just put out one more newsletter and make an extra X dollars from it. So like I always have to balance the business side of things, which I feel like I'm pretty good at because I'm a CFO by trade, with the creative side of things. So it's stacking your skills in this way, but also not being your worst enemy, which I haven't fully figured out yet.
I don't know if anyone's fully figured that out, but you do seem like you really have like your North Star, you're marching towards it, you know what you want, which is such a good feeling. So appreciate you doing this with me. It was so fun. Where can people find you and learn more about you? Obviously, I'll include a link to subscribe, but just tell folks who are listening.
Sure. Hit up mostlymetrics.com, and there you'll also find links to Looking for Leverage, which is the new private equity focused newsletter, as well as Run the Numbers, a podcast where I interview CFOs and the investors that fund them.
Awesome.